Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the StarCraft World Championship Series here in Montreal, Canada, as we have our action heating up on day one, rounding out Group Stage 2 as we make our way to our round of 16 tomorrow and then our finals on Sunday. What could be better? Nothing. I'm Nathanius, welcoming on the desk my boys Pig and Fear Dragon. Fear Dragon, we got to see some ZVP. We really fleshed out the analysis there. But I know that you're hungry to watch some Terran play.
Yeah, very, very hungry to watch some Terran play. I'm, of course, in the meanwhile, going to be taking over what ZombieGuard was observing, which is Jon Snow's games here on my little laptop. He's still playing versus Crow, who's currently leading up 1-0.
Okay, nice, nice. Pig, good to have you on the desk, looking handsome as ever.
Yeah, it's good to be over here. You know, those first two series were a little bit more sudden, I think, and one-sided than we expected. I was like, oh, cool, we're going to start off with 2 long macro series. They're going to go for a while, but the Zergs are coming out swinging to start off the day. The Protoss players struggling a little bit on these new maps to stabilize in the mid-game. So it's going to be exciting now moving into a different matchup. Those Zerg versus Terran, a bit more dynamic. And personally, I just love it whenever we get to see the kind of different regions clash at these events.
Oh, yeah. I think this is a cool matchup. So a story that keeps getting brought up is Stephano, the first player we're going to talk about. He has had a rough time running into so many Zergs, of which there are many in Europe. And a lot of people, when we talked about this group initially, very nice that Stephano gets matchups versus other races because he's considered to be quite strong, some even say unstoppable in these other ones.
Yeah, I mean, he had to earn his way over a Zerg versus Zerg in the form of Cham, so he did earn his spot in being able to play other matchups. He finally said, you know what, I've at least overcome this to some extent for now, so we kind of throw him a bone. It's like, okay, here, have your Terran player. Yeah. But Time has actually been playing really well lately, and he actually beat Drogo, who has had a bit of a rough year, I would say, but still an impressive result.
Yeah, Time, many people's favorite, some people's least favorite. It's
who's least favorite, Nate?
Universally, it's a universally sought after thing. But Time, the player over here, you know, we talked about the Chinese region. Over the years, you've had players that we talk about like Tude Ming, Shigua, XY, and Time is a player that's been, well, frankly, he's the guy that we're talking about right now. He's the guy that's making it this far. And interesting to see where he's going to fall down. Do we know as much about him as the other players?
You know, the weird thing is we've seen Time have some great performances over the last year, but it's often a sort of hot and cold thing when we see a player, you know, maybe from the Chinese region come to one of these events. They can do very well at one event, and then the next one, we just don't see them for a while. They stop qualifying, and it's this strange thing where I'd love to see Time change that. A year or two ago, it was Cyan we were very excited for. Recently, Time has been the one doing very well over there in China, taking out players like Jigua. He 2-0'd No Regret just earlier this morning, which is by, you know, No Regret is not an easy match at all. That is actually one of the easiest players to lose to in a tournament like this.
That is, No Regret is one of those players you don't want to play when there's pressure on the line. That's for sure. Yeah. So,
exactly.
Stephano, I think, definitely a player we expect to play probably longer games than No Regret would want to play in ZVT. Yeah. Do we like that for Time by any chance?
It's kind of interesting. I don't really know exactly whether it's going to be like longer games or shorter games. I mean, we'd have to ask Tasteless on that, since he would have the expert analysis. But one kind of interesting thing I have found out is that, or I guess 2 things. One is that none of the Chinese players have made it into those 2 spots. I see them into Group Stage 3 every single time this year. So no player has been able to secure those 2 spots every single time. So Time has been there before, but like not really been able to be consistent. And none of the Chinese players have really made it to the playoffs before. They've always been Group Stage 3, and then they kind of hit that big hard wall. So if Time is looking really good here, that would really set him up well for Group Stage 3, go in with some confidence, and maybe be the first Chinese player this year to make it to the playoffs.
It's a big obstacle though, Stephano, right? He's this player who he's so good at the non-Zerg versus Zerg matchups. Like, all the time, he comes out, and I remember when he was first getting back into, like, you know, coming back from the retirement, and he was just destroying everybody, all the Terrans and Protosses. I think it was like Valencia 2016 or something when he really just had this crazy run. He's so good when he's on point and when he's in his element. I wouldn't be surprised to see lots of upgrades, lots of Ling counterattacks.
Yeah, lots of Lings.
He plays his own style as well, so it's hard to get preparation against Stephano, and that's what worries me for Time here. Stephano is going to be very different to the Zergs you're playing on the Korean ladder, on the Chinese ladder. So it's interesting to see how do the players adjust to each other. Time, I think, is going to come out with some relatively cookie-cutter play, I would imagine. But Stephano is just that rock who wants to defend. He wants to get into the mid-game in this insurmountable position, cover the map and creep, and just overwhelm his opponent.
So will we put Time then as an underdog for this matchup? Either of you feel free to jump on this one.
I would actually agree with pretty much everything a Pig just said, and I would put Time as a bit of an underdog, just because Stephano in non-Zerg versus Zerg is so good. It's always been a Zerg versus Zerg that's held him back, and when he doesn't have that to kind of burden him down, he's always been a really strong contender.
Yeah, from what I've heard, Stephano does like to play that brawler style where he'll have lots of Ling counterattacks available, build a lot of Lings early on to just swallow the map up. If you try to 2-1-1 him, I've heard it's quite, it's quite dangerous.
You know, it is very dangerous, but like he's the one you want to do tricky adjustments against Stephano because he'll be so pointed in how he responds. I remember when he was getting back into Legacy of the Void and just talking to him, and I was like, you know, so a lot of players are struggling against Terran right now. You know, Reapers are good. This is back in the tanky vac.
Yeah.
And Stephano's
Reaper
like,
grenades at 10 damage.
he just shrugged his shoulders. He was like, I don't know what people are complaining about. He's like, Terran's easy. You don't even need gas. And I was like, oh, what? He's like, no, man, you just need Queens and Zerglings. It defends everything Terran has. And then you have 4 bases and the map's covered in creep and you just win. And that's like Stephano in a nutshell, you know. He's just like so focused on his Queens, his Zerglings.
Yeah.
He loves to use this very mineral heavy composition. And if he gets away with it, it's very frightening.
To be fair, back then the Ultralisk also had 8 armor with all of its upgrades. And
I guess that was,
Marauders had 2 attacks.
Nathaniel's just having flashbacks as Pig describes this.
My PTSD's kicking in here, guys. I'm just a little, you know, the tough days. But Stephano still comes in as a player, and he says himself in his interviews, he wants to play matchups other than ZVT. There's still a tough tournament for him though, because if he makes it past here, there's a lot of Zergs. The European region is swarming with them, no pun intended, and they're good. They're very hard to stop, and they kind of dominate all the tournaments for a reason.
Yeah, I think he can do well versus a lot of opponents, but it's the Serals, the Scarlets, the Lambos who are just so expert in that matchup that I don't think he's going to be able to do well against unless he's changed something up drastically.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, there's always that kind of thing where, you know what, you make it to Group Stage 3, you make it into the money, you get some of those WCS points and whatnot, which, of course, this is the last chance to get WCS points. Not sure if it's going to be as impactful for someone as Stephano, but it's still going to be a really, really nice win if he can just make it over this match, get to Group Stage 3, and then find out who he's going to face.
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting thing because so many people are fans of Stephano. He's such a legendary player in the StarCraft history. What about TvZ holds him back? Like, what is it? We say this literally every time we talk about him on a desk.
Stephano says this every single time.
And he also says it. He says it, though we see it in his play as well. As it is the Zergs that shut him down.
Yeah, you know, he's a smart guy. Stephano's not someone who's like, hey, this is my weakness. You know, I've got this one muscle that's very undeveloped. I'm going to go work out every other muscle. No, he does focus on Zerg versus Zerg, but I think there's some sort of mental block there where he doesn't get in the quite the same rhythm. Maybe he just thrives on the using different units to his opponent, because when it gets down to you're both using the same unit compositions and clashing, there's these minute details which decide the game. Whereas I feel like Stephano strikes me as a player who finds an edge that his race has over the opponent's race, which other players might not even see, and then he leverages that. He exploits it, he builds an advantage.
All right, well, we're going to bring the players out on stage. We've got Smix to introduce our legendary, famous French player and our Chinese underdog. How you doing over there?
I'm good. I just went up to Stephano. Noise indeed. I went up to Stephano to see how he feels about finally facing a non-Zerg, and he told me finally. So we'll see if it's his time to shine on this WCS stage. Please welcome it to Stephano and Time.
Finally, time to play something that isn't a ZVZ, gentlemen.
It's going to be fun for him. No, Stephano's going to be really excited about this.
I'm glad you're here for your dragon. In Control would have left me hanging on that one.
I know, that's not big. I like locked eyes with him. He nods me like, no, don't say anything. Leave him.
You're too kind, Ravi. You're too kind. Sometimes you got to leave a sailor out at sea so he learns his lesson.
Lessons perhaps going to be learned here. Interested to see what the fan vote obviously has got to go to Stephano.
Oh, yeah.
Stephano is considered a legend in his own right.
Yeah.
We always have that wonderful video. And I think one of the coolest things about StarCraft is the history. There's so much history to pull from. And every time we do like that big fancy video where it shows all the WCS champions, the first person that you see is Stephano. Everybody knows him. Everybody loves him. He's such a funny guy. It's hard not to.
Yeah, he's been around, and this is one of the things that gets talked about a lot, where you can kind of have this meteoric rise in StarCraft sometimes because the meta starts kind of favoring your playstyle. You find that playstyle, that kind of build that really does well in particular maps or something. but it's about being consistent. It's about being able to stay at the top, and that's what Stephano has been able to do across so many different time spans. He's not always necessarily the gold championship winner, the person that we're like, oh man, this guy that's gonna beat Cyril or anything, but he has been at the top for such a long time in StarCraft.
Yep.
Like there's a reason why everyone knows who he is.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a very, very strong player. I think Time comes in here with very little information known about him by, Stephano and a lot of the European players. So Time does have that advantage. He plays on the Korean ladder all day. He practices very, very hard. And, he qualified for a GSL, right? At one point, I'm quite sure. He's definitely played against the champions. And he plays against Sue regularly in online cups.
Yeah.
He's playing against, Rogue and these guys. And while the results haven't really been in his favor, I think he's used to stiff competition. So it partly is about how Time can perform when you travel. It's something you need to build up a lot of experience with. Many players find it hard. Some players just get out here and they say, you know what, I'm just so happy to be here at this event, be here in Montreal, and I'm just going to show my best play. And they kind of just naturally sink into that groove. So I've got my eye on Time to see how he handles any losses, how he adjusts mid-series, because for me, there's a strong mentality component there.
Yeah.
See how he goes up against Stephano's never going to get stressed at all. Nothing will faze him whatsoever.
I don't know that Stephano's capable of feeling stressed here, Dragon. Being cool is kind of his thing.
Yeah, and that's actually, I think, going to work a little bit to Time's detriment, because whenever I think of Time, I think of a Terran player that's very, very aggressive. He loves getting super in his opponent's face, and if he can't really get Stephano to flinch or to wince or to blink at all, then that's going to be a big problem for his playstyle.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most interesting things. Is Time going to bring the execution to the table? Because when we look at Stephano, he is really good in those non-mirror matchups. Is there anything that Time could even try to key in on? If you were to study, is there anything when you look at Stephano's play?
Well, mates, I know this build that has such an unbelievably high win rate.
Oh, that one that I've never seen lose in a tournament?
I've never seen lose in a tournament, except for a couple seasons of Challenger now.
Well, when it's used against Cyril, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, for our less memey viewers, that involves building 2 barracks on your opponent's side of the
Sometimes
map,
3.
getting
I'm
some
so glad
rings
you're here,
and getting
Pig.
in there.
Thank you. Let's see if we get any of those unbeatable 2 reactions, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for Stephano versus Time.
Bienvenue, Montreal. I'm in control. He's Rotterdam, and welcome to WCS Montreal as we have a fantastic Zerg versus Terran. It's going to be the Frenchman taking on one of the top Chinese players in an early round of this tournament, but it's a nice little precursor of what's to come, Mr. Rotterdam.
And it's an important one, because this is a tough group that also has Chem and Drogo in it. So that obviously means that 2 of these 4 players are going to be eliminated in this phase of the tournament already, as we are starting off with a traditional PP.
Yeah. A little bit of a pause, make sure that everything is aligned correctly so these guys can play at their peak performance. Now, we've had some upsets of this tournament, and I would have to say, if Time beats Stephano here, he's of course not eliminated, but that would be such a missed opportunity. He's actually able to win a tough TvZ against Cham, who is no slouch. This is a guy who last year really emerged as almost a household name, coming out of that South American scene and doing really well for himself. Not an easy Zerg, but the loser of this match, like you said, Rotterdam, has to face a doozy to get out of this group. It's not an easy group.
Nope, not at all. And I'm impressed by Stephano to finally win a ZVZ series against a tough opponent that is Chem. Time also surprised me a little bit, taking out Drogo 2-0 here. And Jeff, maybe you can help me, but I'm so lost on Time. I was on the hype train of Time in the earliest days of the year. I really felt that finally we had a Chinese player who wasn't just good, but I really thought he would take his game to the next level, where you'd be like, hey, he's going to be a regular top 8, top 16 WCS contender. I really felt that this man spawning in the left bottom side had that potential. Unfortunately, he's not being consistent at all. Either way, this is Time.
I have to agree, Roddy, as the awesome band Blind Guardian once said, time, what is time? He trains on that Korean server, he plays against top-tier opponents, and he does well for himself, but hasn't made the results just yet. And the guy standing in his way, coming out of France, the top right-hand side, it's the Red Zerg, Stephano. I would say the original rock star of StarCraft 2.
And no one would disagree with you. But just to talk a little more about Time, is that in the beginning of the year, he looked so strong, he looked consistent, he even played in the GSL Code S. He spent some time over in Korea, and I was like, damn, this is a Chinese player that's really gonna take it to the next level. And then suddenly you fast forward a couple months into the year, WCS Valencia, he doesn't even make it into Challenger of China. He loses in the round of 8. For this challenger of Montreal, he lost in the group stage of the Chinese challenger. That doesn't make any sense to me. He lost to Jigawa, of course, a name we're familiar with. But if you really want to take it to the next level, you can't lose to Jigawa anymore. And then he also lost to Breaking GG. Well, Jeff, maybe you can give me some more on that one, because I'm just shocked. I really thought that Time was going to be that consistent, strong force from the Chinese region. But he's not that. He's obviously very good, because he's here. He took out Drogo. He's already in the second round. But what kind of a Time are we going to see here? I have no idea.
Yeah, for me, one of the first times I saw him was Total Biscuit actually had him in Shoutcraft, and he held his own. He beat some of the top-tier Koreans. I think he's one of those guys that has that kind of talent that can win an explosive best-of-1 or something like that. But traveling from China to some of these events or playing against some of these opponents you're not as familiar with can be very difficult. Now, getting into the game here a little bit, we are on Cerulean Falls. This is one of the, or Cerulean Fall, excuse me, one of the maps we were really liking. A very large map in a ZVT. And so far, a little bit dicey as that Reaper does die for minimal scouting information. Now, of course, as we can see, nothing hugely developmental is happening right now, but you still want that Reaper around to make sure a cheeky 400 Zerglings don't come running your way.
And if this was Blight, then that's something you absolutely have to worry about. With Stephano, I would worry about it a little less. What Pig said on the desk, I think, is spot on.
Yeah.
He's going to make a whole bunch of queens, he's going to make a bunch of lings, and he's going to defend, 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 until he's very happy with his 80+ drone economy.
Yeah.
And then he will think about attacking. But Stephano is still one of the most defensive Zergs out there. And I think if there's one thing you can criticize Stephano on a little bit, other than his TvZ, is that I think he's a lazy scouter. He really doesn't go that extra mile to get that extra scouting information in. He just kind of peeks. He has vision here, he has vision there, and he always assumes that everything is normal. I think it's very doable to trick Stephano a couple of times in a best of 3, in a best of 5, because he is not the type of guy that's gonna run lings up your ramp all the time to make sure it's standard, to make sure everything is normal. No, he just kind of has a little bit of vision, and he assumes things are normal.
Well, Roddy, things are gonna get weird. We have Concussive Shell as one of the first upgrades there, and there is the armory behind this. It's gonna be like Marauder Hellbat, and that's a very interesting combo. The Hellbat's, of course, potent against early units like Lings, and then Marauder's very good at taking out Queens and can take damage pretty well.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's a really cool build, especially against someone like Stephano, who really believes that he can defend everything with Lings and Queens. This is one of those builds, you kind of want to run a Ling into that natural, maybe run into the main base and see attack lab, see that being spinned, see a couple of Marauders being produced. Right now, Stephano lost his Overlord, and that's the only vision he had on the other side of the map. This is going to get tricky, man. With that armory already done, these Hellions can morph into Hellbats. This is going to be a tricky hold.
Weird timing, though. It's a lot of Hellions, so the Hellbat is potential, but look at this drop. It's a single Marauder with Concussive Shells who's going to slow down the Queen, I guess.
I don't hate it, though, Jeff.
No,
I really don't hate it
either.
Let's see. I mean, 26 Lings are on the way, 2 extra Queens are on the way, but Stephano did not see this coming. He is going to have an overwhelming amount of Zerglings, but we know what Hellbats can do against Zerglings.
And here come the Hellbats. They're going to go up into the natural, actually. They're not going to settle for a third base. Getting in there, there's a huge concave of units, though. Backs off, sees a pretty adequate defense. Might try and go for that third base in the end, but as time goes on, more Queens coming out, more Lings. Now, the Lings don't contribute super much, but also keep in mind, with just the one medevac, the healing ability of this force is not super great. Time behind this backing away, and so much potential here is kind of, he might have to actually just evacuate, Roddy.
The longer this takes, the better it becomes for Stephano, obviously. These Queens are getting extra energy. The Queen count is getting higher and higher. I think that, you know, with 7 or 8 Hellbats, I really think he could have done serious damage on that hatchery, right? He really could have put a lot of pressure on Stephano, forcing Stephano to go down a ramp. Instead, he gave Stephano a lot of time to get ready for this. It's still just Lings and Queens, but the Queen count is almost getting silly.
Yeah, the Queens are so good at picking off that medevac and making sure that nothing much happens there. Now, this Liberator does siege up here behind the main, getting some pretty darn good damages. Most of the Queens are over here. And at this point in time, I do have to, well, here we go. We might get a little bit of a surround. Now, those are Hellbats, so surrounding is a bit of a tricky endeavor. The medevac pulls back. Nice little move, but the force has been whittled down such that it's no longer a threat to any of the bases, and it's more about occupying attention as this Liberator is racking up the kills.
Yep, a lot of lost mining time here for Stephano, and of course 6 drones on top of that. That's excellent for time. I still think he could have been a little more successful with the Hellbats, but in the end, I think this is an opening you can settle for. Now the Queens are out of position, and Hellbats became Aliens. Light them up, baby. A lot of drones going down. That is an excellent move by time.
17 drones so far have died, and as Roddy pointed out, a lot of missed mining time here. Keep in mind, this is just the first Liberator. If this is like the second or third, I think the damage would be pretty acceptable for Stephano, but as this is just the first one, a lot of work being done here on behalf of Time. And I do have to say, that first attack, more often we look at it, we say, well, this has got to go now. It's got to do a lot of damage. But because Time was pretty patient about it, it did get damage with the Hellion run by. I feel like it was fairly successful. It's obviously not game-ending damage, but it was pretty all right.
Yep, it started off slow, and then it went even slower, and I'm kind of feeling that he missed his window, but I love the move of turning those Hellbats back into Hellions, and then going for the drive-by, and Stephano had an insane amount of drones on that base, and finally Time got the damage that he was looking for, and this game is suddenly looking really good for our Chinese Terran, and very dicey for Stephano, whose Bailing Nest isn't even done yet, which obviously means that Bailing speed is a very long way off.
Very modeled force over here, just the 4 queens, some lings behind, still Hellbats are part of this composition. Tanking the back and trying to do it at camp, but it's a good surround by the lings. They get on top of that Bioforce, and the upgrades are favorable for Stephano. As the force begins to deplete, it looks like this will be pushed back. Now, some of the cost to this that's worth noting, creep tumors are not actually being extended over here, and the Bioforce remains.
This is good enough for Time because he's actually economically ahead, and that is not common at all for Terran versus Zerg in this phase in the game. If he's just trading out units here, which is kind of what he was doing there, that is good enough. Now, Stephano fires up a big round of drones immediately, so he's going to take that economic lead that he so desperately needs.
Wow.
But that 4th base is on location, Jeff. That's also not common. That just shows how strong of a position Time is currently in.
Well, there's a chunk of... It feels so weird to keep saying Time because it's his name and it's something we got to talk about. But if the 4th base gets canceled, then that kind of risk becomes a bad move by Time. But that being said, as you pointed out, this pressure is allowing Time to stay ahead economically. And he's also, let's keep in mind, teching beyond Stephano. He's only on Ling Queen. He's going to lose his pace, it looks like.
Yep, a lot of lings getting picked up. A couple drones getting fired down as well there. Well done. He's chasing down those drones on the left side. This hatchery is taking a lot of damage. Stephano's going to try to save the hatch, but it's way too late for that, which means that this hatch is going to fall. And more drones going down as well. Man, Time is playing a great game here.
He's playing pretty fantastically. Most of the Bioforce is going to get picked up and evacuated at the low cost of just a few Marines.
Wow.
That's actually going to be
Wow.
taps out. And the pure aggression from our Chinese Terran Time is going to be enough to fold Stephano in that first game. And I'll tell you what, Roddy, you asked a lot of questions going into this saying, what kind of Time is going to show up? If he keeps that level of play across all 3 matchups, this guy could be representing that Chinese scene really well here.
Yep, it's so hard to keep track of him because obviously we don't see all of his games. We know that recently he attended a big offline event in China where he did take out Gigawatt 3-0, and that's the player that he's lost against this year as well. So that could have given us a good indication that he's in shape, but then he lost 3-0 in the semifinals against Su, I believe it was. And that's not something we can look too much into because Su is one of the greatest players we've ever seen in StarCraft 2. But damn, I'm impressed so far. That looked excellent. That's the time that I was really getting excited over in the beginning of the year, the end of last year, where I was like, damn, this Chinese player, he's going to take it to the next level. Then he kind of disappointed me a couple of WCS events, and he really didn't show the level that I expect. But boy, oh boy, that looked very good.
Well, that was some of the best TvZ I've seen out of the non-Korean scene, which we still include Time in there as well, in a while. Very aggressive, very economic. He did not lose units, not a whole lot of micro mistakes. A little bit different, by the way, the concussive shell single Marauder. I normally would want to be really critical of that because it's super weird.
It's cute, it's cute.
It worked out okay.
Yeah. And I mean, the way that he kept track of his Liberator, right? He was kind of out multitasking Stephano. There's no other way to put it. That Liberator was winning the dance against that Spore Crawler while he was keeping his Hellbats alive against the Queens.
Right.
In that phase in the game, Time was simply straight up out multitasking Stephano. That's not an easy thing to do. I'm very impressed. I love what I saw there. And you know, it's also like a fresh, how do you say that? Like a
breath of fresh air.
Breath of fresh air, indeed, Jeff. That's where I was going. Sorry, a little jet lag, perhaps. Is that this was finally not a Terran that opened with the idea of like, you know what, let's push back the creep a little bit. And if I can do that, I'm okay with the first 6 minutes of the game. No, this was old school TvZ.
Came out punching.
Yep, where he went for the drones and he got 17 of them. And I just like seeing that, man. I really feel that too many Terrans settle for almost nothing. And I know it's tough to deal damage against the Zergs because Zergs have a lot of vision, Queens are good, Lings are often in position. I get it, it's not easy, but I love when Terrans just go for it.
Well, you know, Roddy, it was one of the games that I really enjoy at high-level StarCraft where it wasn't like Stephano made this glaring mistake and then lost. The 2 players played really well. Time just outplayed him. Now, speaking of that player, the lower right-hand side here, as the blue Terran from China, it's Time.
Looked excellent there in game 1 on Cerulean Fall. However, our second map is going to be Parasite. And I think this is a map that's very, very tough for Terran in the longer games against Zerg. But perhaps he can surprise us again. On the left top side, we're looking at the Frenchman, who's eager to turn things around. It is Stephano. Hey, he brought back the Plushy.
All right. A little stuffed animal to keep him company. Probably shoeless as well. Another Stephano fact. Likes to play with his shoes off.
Who doesn't, Jeff? I like to play with my pants off.
Yeah. Okay. WCS might have some sayings about that.
Well, isn't that what we have boots for, Jeff?
That's true. Not these guys, though.
No one knows what happens in the booth.
What happens in the booth gets broadcast out to thousands of people. But anyways, now why is this map tough for Terran, Roddy, in the late game?
Because it's just so freaking long. We know that Terran players, they like to get setups, right? They like to get tanks in a good position somewhere, and then eventually you dance back and forth, and then you want to just rally your units towards a sieging position that you've created for yourself. You almost can't do that on Parasite. You better move out with big clumps of units, because if you send out units one by one, someone like Stephano is going to have a group of 28 Zerglings, and he's going to pick off those reinforcements over and over again. There are so many counterattacks possibilities as well for the Zerg players out there, where they can send in links from every single angle. So this is a tough map, and I feel the longer it goes, the more difficult it becomes for Time. But maybe he can surprise us. Maybe he's got ultra strong late game when it comes to advanced liberators with advanced ballistics and a bunch of ghosts as well.
Yeah.
But normally I would always put my money on Stephano here just because of this way and the way it suits those great counterattacks for Zerg.
Or perhaps he can craft a favorable late game as well. I mean, based off what Time's playstyle was in that first game, it was just really beautifully aggressive in two ways. He was aggressive out on the map, causing damage, but then he was taking that fast fourth. He was taking even a fairly quick third. He was doing it on location, as you pointed out. These are the kinds of moves that can be made to look silly, but if it all synchronizes and your opponent just gets caught off, it's multiple bullets in the chamber of ways to win the game. It's a really nice gameplay.
And stylistically, I loved it as well against someone like Stephano, because Stephano will counterattack, but he will do it when he's on 70 or 80 drones. He likes to get all those drones out as quickly as possible, but early game, he is pretty much the most defensive guy there is. So why not build that fort base on location? Like, what do you have to worry about? If you keep him busy, if you know you did at least a tiny bit of economic damage, and you kept the queens busy, and you kept the lings busy at home as well, you simply don't have to worry about it, because Stephano is not gonna make an insane amount of units of 50 drones. That's simply not who he is. That's not how he likes to play.
Now this time around, our Blue Terran player will be having a more successful Reaper, as it does see the third base timing. It hasn't succumbed just yet. Of course, as I say that, there we go. Anyways, good information here. Now Stephano, we've seen, is not going to be the kind of guy necessarily, not going to do like what a Scarlet would do, perhaps, where some cheeky Ravagers might come out, some Roaches, something like that. It's instead going to be a fairly solid early to mid game. Stephano does want the game to go late.
Yes.
Not just because of the map, like you said, but also just play-wise. He likes to have that map control style into the late game hive tech stuff and win there.
And Stephano is also excellent when it comes to late game army control, right? When it comes to multiple spellcasters, when it comes to positioning. We know that that's where he shines, that's where he excels at. It's not really the fact that he's very unpredictable. Now this Overlord is going to fly in, and it's going to see that Time is already rushing up to those 3 bases. That orbital is pretty much done. I don't think this is a shocking surprise for Stephano, but it's still nice to confirm considering what happened in that previous game where Time was very successful with his opening.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to say this even before this opening really comes to fruition, but I love that Time is mixing it up once again. This is going to be 4 Hellions dropped off inside the main. And something that Roddy pointed out and has proven to be a pretty intelligent call here is Stephano's not the most active with scouting, and the map vision's not really there. So if 4 Hellions drop down and you're just then pulling drones,
he's way out of position.
Could be a barbecue.
Yep, Stephano's out of position. He needs to send those links immediately to the main base. Stephano, you need some queens here as well. Time's just gonna go for it immediately. Drones being pulled. Well done there by Stephano. He's there just in time.
Good surround, good block there. It looks very easy for us to see it, but that movement is actually quite difficult. Stephano's able to expertly push this back at 0 cost. Now this opening, I kind of liken it to a Widowmine drop or something like that, where like the chance of success isn't as high, but the reward is tremendous. Now, if Stephano doesn't react accordingly, you can lose all your drones, and the game's basically almost forfeit just off of that.
Yeah, the only thing we could maybe say is that I would have loved to see Time come in more from the left side there in the main base, because the deeper you come in from the left, the harder it becomes for Lynx, if they were not already in the main base, to really get close there. And if you get on the left side with that spawning pool, you should have been able to guarantee get at least a couple of shots off. So maybe a minor missed opportunity there, but at least he saved his Hellion, so he didn't overcommit or something.
Third base already going to be saturated here for time. It's a very aggressive third base, but why not? As we kind of pointed out, Stephano, not the most active scouter. His counterattack playstyle will end up coming up, but it's, again, kind of more of a mid-game counterattack style, as opposed to players like a Nurchio or even a Serral where all game long there's Lings poking and prodding trying to get in.
Yep, Raynor as well, so the first one that jumps into mind. But Stephano, he loves to defend, he loves to get his economy going, he loves to spread creep everywhere, and that's the way that he gets vision. Stephano, even though he did have one Ling on patrol there, in general he's not someone who puts Lings all over the map to get extra vision, no. He relies on seeing everything. It's everything or nothing for Stephano. It's not a little blip here and a little blip there. Nope, it's all about that creep, just basically smoothering this entire map.
Now he is going to see this small force pushing out here, but it's a very opportunistic force. It's coming in before there's Baneling speeds, before there's any kind of mid-game tech. It's just going to be Lings and Queens. Now Stephano does have that nice creep spread here, so a lot of this fight could take place on that creep. And there's the Banelings waddling back and forth. In fact, speed's not even being researched. You got to keep your eye on that, because that could be one of those things that becomes a problem. But here's the surround, and Stephano's going to clamp down.
Yep, Banelings coming in from the right side are very successful. They will connect with these bio units. The tank is going to get picked off. And this is also one of the things, though. If this is like a blue shift, that push could be a lot more difficult to deal with. But on Parasite, it just takes so freaking long to walk to the other side of the map, Jeff.
Interesting choice here by Time, going up to 6 gases on those 3 bases. I think whenever you hear a caster say interesting, there's a little bit of a, anyway, not the biggest deals, but yeah, not a fan of it. We'll see. Now that push was pushed back quite strong. He's going to start fighting some creep here on this right side, really work that angle. But as Roddy said, when that initial push gets pushed back, creep spread between those 4 to 6 queens that are out there just kind of doing that is going to be strong. 2-2 upgrades coming up for Stephano as well. And not too far behind is Time, which is nice for him.
And economically, this is just a much stronger game for Stephano. You can see that he was never down in workers. He has created a healthy lead for himself.
Repelled the grass.
Yep. Second factory gets being thrown on as well. That was the same for Time in the previous game. But in that previous game, for instance, he was getting that second factory while he was already building a 4th base on location that was pretty much done. You can see now he's still stuck on those 3 CCs. And it seems like he's going for a massive 3-base push where he's going to get multiple tanks out, a bunch of Liberators as well, and then obviously support that push with a bunch of Marines. And I almost feel that he wants to win the game with that 3-base push, because I don't feel like he has any intentions to slowly and steady sit back and secure a 4th or even a 5th base. No. With that second factory, with all the Liberators, I feel he wants to make a massive, very strong push.
I mean, it's a tough spot to be in with that timing attack, Roddy, but how do you like his chances? Is this his best way to win, or is this not going to work?
On this map, I kind of think it is his best chance to win, because the longer it goes, I just feel the more difficult it becomes for Terran, and the harder it becomes to secure all those mineral lines. Now, he's going to throw up a 4th base, but that doesn't mean he still doesn't put a lot of X into that 3-base push basket.
Okay, it is just Marines, tanks, and medevacs for right now. We'll have to see if that diversifies at all. One Liberator is spotted by a incredibly well-positioned Zergling. It's like the only Zergling in the entire area, but there it is. And still fighting against the creep is Time, and I have to say, the attack itself hasn't been successful. And the creep spread's been ridiculous. Well, a little bit of an engagement right here as the Lings kind of batter up against that Bioforce.
Yeah, I don't think Stephano was expecting the rest of the army to show up there. He's just like, I can fight those 16 Marines. But he obviously couldn't fight those 46 Marines.
Oh.
Now, this is going to be the first counterattack. Look at the work account, by the way. This is of 88 drones. This is exactly what we're talking about, right? And this is still good, and this is still successful stuff, even though it doesn't get too much done. He really wants to get a 4th base. He's not getting it. Liberators start showing up on the other side of the map.
On the right flank, he's getting pushed here by this giant force. All of a sudden, Time repels that initial Ling attack for minimum damage. The Liberator getting some really nice findings here.
Queen is safe there. Well done.
Move over, but still some drones dying. Now, this is just mostly Lings, and if they engage here, it will be off creep. So this base is probably canceled. Behind this, there's a huge swarm of Zerglings looking for the the flank attack. And
Time is going to spot it, though. Yes, Time is going to spot it with a couple of Marines, but I'm afraid for Time that Stephano simply has way too many units here. He's going to clean up these tanks. He's going to clean up the Marines as well, at least the ones that didn't make it to the medevacs in time.
Yeah.
But during all of this, he saved his 4th CC, so that is something, but he got a cancel on the 6th base. I mean, this is not a crucial 4th base for the Zerg. It's not the 5th, no. That was the 6th base. And obviously, that kind of shows that Stephano is in an excellent position.
And to even put a stamp on what you just said, I really love how quickly Stephano transitioned into that tier 3 upgrades. Adrenal, 3-3 attack and armor, all coming up as fast as Zerg can get him, basically. Not too far behind is Time, but he will be behind for a little while there. That's going to be an open opportunity for Stephano to really pull ahead. And as you just said, Roddy, he doesn't need to pull ahead because he's pretty much already there. So this game's looking good for the Frenchman.
Yep. The only thing he doesn't have is a massive bank, so that he definitely has to be careful. This is not the type of game where Stephano can more 40 banelings and try to go for a run by. If it doesn't work, who cares? No, then we do care because he doesn't have the money. But I don't think he's going to do something crazy like that because we know Stephano, slow and steady, wins the race for the Frenchman.
Jumping on top of that kind of pile of Creep Timbers and Single Queen is this Bioforce. Time has done, I will say, a great job of remaining very active. Stephano's played up to the level, right? In that first game, it was one of our criticisms against Stephano, was it was Time that was playing expertly and it was Stephano kind of lagging behind. This game, it's a little bit more tit for tat, as they both seem to be doing really well. Stephano, I would say, gets the edge in this game, of course. But right now, one of the concerns that we just kind of talked about, not a huge bank, but also he went with the double Spire, so obviously going to make one into a greater Spire, but only just now. He's had the Hive for a little while, so this could have been time where Corruptors and Broodlords are out, but instead Stephano's remaining map control with just Lings and Banelings. It seems to be working out, but it could have been a little bit scary.
Yep, Time is still in it, but what I don't see for Time now is how he's going to win this game. Unless he really takes his gameplay to the next level, and we're starting to get Ghost and Advanced Ballistics and a lot of Liberators. But with just Marine Tank and a bunch of standard Liberators without Advanced Ballistics, I simply don't see it on a map as big as Parasite, because Stephano will always get a great engagement. He's not going to fight at some choke point near a single ramp. He will never give Time that position.
And he'll engage so cost effectively. He's going to be trading out Lings and Banelings that are super well upgraded for the entire army of Time, right? So I have to agree, Time's going to want this game to go later. He's going to secure 4 bases, as we can see, but he's really got to push towards a 5th. And he's got to start adding on tech labs on barracks, additional factories, starports, that kind of a thing. Right now, behind this, he's not quite doing that just yet. It's additional command centers.
These Lings are so strong as well. I don't think that Time has enough units here. That depot was lowered as well. I would have loved to see Stephano send a couple of Zerglings into the main base or into at least the back end of the natural. At the same time, Time is dropping in the natural of Stephano, at the third base of Stephano as well. I mean, both players losing a lot of STVs. I like it more for Stephano, but at least Time is doing some damage as well.
And the kind of funny thing here for Time is it is about that part of the game where it is actually okay to get down to 40 or 50 SCVs as long as you have a bunch of orbitals behind that. And he was trying to add a couple, but unfortunately they were in front of his naturals. They got canceled.
These tanks are very exposed, and that means they're doing a lot of damage to each other as well. These Zerglings are getting phenomenal trades here. I mean, that went from 7 tanks to 2 tanks very quickly.
Yeah. And the Liberator play is what's kind of keeping Time in here for right now, because I keep looking. I see a high tank count, but then I see it starting to plummet in exchange for Zerglings. I see some economic damage from Time, but unfortunately for him, Stephano is a guy who's hanging around 90 drones. It's a lot.
And he's got plenty of hatcheries as well. Another big counterattack. Once again, these Lings are feisty. They've got all the upgrades Lings could dream of. Liberators, of course, are really going to help, but Time is probably going to end up losing quite a few STVs here once again, as those STVs are very, very exposed and will get picked up quickly.
And every time we see Time doing a good job of taking some damage by killing that middle base, we look back, and he's losing more STVs behind this. He's trying to build command centers, but they're going down at the construction phase.
The tank count isn't here. There's a lot of Banelings coming in from the left side as well. Can the Banelings connect with the Marines? Perhaps it's not even necessary, as the lane count is so freaking high. Good splits, but I think Stephano just has the numbers here.
He absolutely does, and that was the force that was supposed to kind of equalize for Time. Now behind this, he's starting to add Marauders. He's building tanks 2 at a time.
It's just not enough. Like, he needs the 2 units that win you the game against Zerg here are Ghost and Liberators with Advanced Ballistics. I simply do not believe that on a map this big, you're going to get the job done with a couple of Marines and a couple of tanks. It's just, no, the map is too big for that. Stephano has too many opportunities to get a great engagement there. Unless you take it like the slowest push ever.
But so far, Roddy, he's not even moving in that direction. There is no Ghost Academy that I could spot. We're not seeing additional starports, nothing like that. So right now, I think he kind of wants to remain in that brawler area of just like Bioforce backed by tanks with some Liberator play. And that's good and fine. But once we start pushing into like the 20 minutes to 25, it just doesn't cut it. There's stacked defenses, there's super well upgraded Spire units, and it just gets shut down super hard.
The Liberator play has been pretty cool. He's obviously good when it comes to harassing, even though he sees Stephano up on top of a Spore Crawler. But right now, with the economy that Stephano has, Stephano being maxed out, Stephano as rich as he is, this is all just not that impactful anymore. Like, if Stephano's on 50 drones, we're like, whoa, this is serious damage. But you're looking at a 6-base Zerg that's maxed out. It's cute, it's nice and all, but it's simply not enough.
And there is that Ghost Academy, but as Roddy was just pointing out, I fear it may come a little bit too late. Time is being pushed off the map. There are so many Corruptors here that if you want to do any kind of drop or Liberator play, that's fine, but they will absolutely die. And Time's going to make that adjustment tech-wise, but it's just so late, Roddy. Like, by the time he has 5 Ghosts, I feel like we could be looking at 15 Broodlords.
You know what's also interesting here? Is Drilling Claws.
Why not?
It feels very late for Drilling Claws. Like, I love Drilling Claws, but I would love to see that 7 minutes ago, not right now.
Better late than never, Roddy. That's what Time always says.
But never late is better, Jeff.
Yeah, I never heard that, actually. Okay, well, here we go. The Corruptor's going to use their ability. In a couple of seconds, the DPS is going to go through the roof. There it is now. They will get a pound of flesh out for that base. And that's not great, but look at the bank of Stephano. 2,000 minerals-ish, 2,500 gas. And this is the exchange. But I feel like even these medevacs die. Yeah, they die. So every time there's a hatch that dies, like, yeah, it's a cool move. But he's sitting on 80 drones. He's maxed out. He's got a bank. Like, you're only slowing down the bank accumulation.
Yep, but slowly but steady, he's getting ghosts. And as long as Terran can up to 12 or 12, 14 ghosts, then I kind of want to believe. Now, obviously, I don't like it for Time, but I like it a lot more than if he would have just continued producing Marines and tanks, because he would have never won the game with that. So it's kind of a Hail Mary play, so to speak, but he needs to do something, right?
Stephano circling around outside this middle base. He's going to go ahead and bust open that wall, or attempt to. Lings and Banelings sweeping in here. The army is now mostly Marauders, but he gets a cancellation there as well. Corruptors show up, and the Viking immediately wants nothing to do with that, so it lands. And these Ling counterattacks, again, killing SCVs right and left.
And Ling's getting on top of Ghost as well. Now, that's a trait that every Zerg player truly loves. Why not? A couple minerals for those very expensive Ghosts. At the same time, Time is trying to drop again, but let's do a guessing game, Jeff.
Do it.
How many SCVs did Stephano kill in this game? Because I'm going to say...
68.
I'm going to go higher. I'm going to go 81 SCVs.
Show us.
52. We are terrible at this.
Well, not me. I was only off by 16, my friend.
Yeah, I know. You did great. I was way off. I was way too ambitious.
I think it's 190 and it's like 52. You're like, you know what?
It's over 200, but it's still... It was worth it, okay, guys? It was really good.
Well, Stephano's still going to try to get it done here with these Tier 1 and 1.5 units joined by the Corruptors. And this is that absolute map control situation. It can be a little bit frustrating, by the way, because it's like, Stephano, hey, go ahead and make those endgame units, my friend. Like, you can close this out. He's got all the bases. He's accumulating some bank. He's pushed Time into this position where, keep in mind, almost all the other bases, Time has been mining this entire time. So it really only comes down to the middle base. And I'm so tired of saying Time, Kevin. I had no idea I said it so much until a guy named Time is who I'm commentating.
You know, for the last 2 minutes, I've been zoned out because I've been thinking, why are we even playing on this map? What did Time veto? Like, why did he not veto Parasite? This map is so freaking difficult. Yeah. What are you doing to yourself, young man?
He will in the future, I guarantee. Just looking at this going, I've made a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Ling's now ransacking this base as well, but again, remember, it's mostly mined out. Corruptor's going to show up, and they're like, where's the air units? We've kind of killed all of them, Stephano. So it is just the few medevacs and a couple of random Vikings. Again, the exchange comes in. Banelings might clamp down on the planetary that would be, and it goes down and explodes. This has got to be it. That's it. GG, as Time has had enough. And Stephano putting the stamp on what you said at the very beginning, Roddy. Paranoid, tough TvZ map, I would say.
Yes, I don't think we're going to see it until we reach the semifinals of this tournament again. Most Terran players will insta-veto this. Stephano was probably very pleased to actually play it, and I think he played it great, don't get me wrong. I love almost everything that Stephano did in this game, but he just kind of did what you're supposed to do as a Zerg player. You know, the more that I think about Time's strategy is, why didn't he open up with the Widow Mines with Drilling Claws? I would have loved that a lot more than tanks. I think tanks are great on the smaller maps. Like, if he goes tanks on Fracture, awesome. Tanks on Blue Shift, totally get it. Don't get me wrong. Even Cerulean 4 can absolutely get behind it. But on a map this long, I would have loved to see him open up with Widow Mines immediately and then just hope for some of those miraculous mine hits, right? But tanks are just too expensive, but then too slow to make it to the other side of the map to do what they normally do, and that has put serious pressure on a Zerg player.
You know, I don't disagree with you, but I think one of the fun things to kind of analyze about Stephano's playstyle is that it has this high-octane defense and pressure, and it's just Lings and Banelings that are then matched up by Corruptors. But that's supposed to be, and for most other Zergs, it's a very transitional period where they go into Roach Ravager or into Hydras or into Fast Hive. But Stephano, and I've watched a lot of his ZVT, he does not do that for a very long time. So I feel like a lot of Terran players, they go into this and they go, oh, okay, I've seen this before. But but then it's just more Lings and Banelings. So they question themselves, is it tanks? Is it Widow Mines? Do I go Hellbats mid-game? I don't know. I think it puts a lot of fun pressure on the Terran, both in the game, of course, but also strategically, they're not sure where to go in response.
I really feel you can make a couple of solid memes out of Stephano's play, because he's one of those guys where he's like, I don't counterattack often, but when I do, it's with 88 Zerglings and 3 upgrades, right? Like, you know, it's not the early game run-bys. He's not annoying with 6 Zerglings. He doesn't go for the 4 Baneling run-by, blowing up some SCVs. Yeah. No, he's got to wait until he's got 3 and Adrenal Glands. But then those counterattacks truly hurt as well.
Some people counterattack, Stephano counter-invades. He's like, you're attacking my base, I'm threatening your existence in the game itself. We do have a little bit of a technical pause here. These players are going to work that out. But if you're just now joining us, the series is 1-1 each. And this is the winner match. So the loser of this will go to the decider match, awaiting a couple of fantastic players. But before we get there, we've got one more game in the best of 3.
Let's see if I have a little update for you, Jeff, about the other match in this group. I do.
But it'll have to wait, Kevin, because we don't know who these guys are.
All right, Jeff, tell me who they are.
Well, this guy right here is the blue Terran, comes out of China, and his name's Time.
Is that the same Terran as we saw in the last 2 games?
It is.
Huh? Okay.
But there's people with short-term memory loss.
On the left top side of Dreamcatcher, I'd say a much better map for Terran. We're looking in the main base of our French Zerg. It is Stephano.
It's a handsome guy.
To finish up my story real quick, the lower bracket match in this group has been played. Once again, if you just joined us, welcome guys. We're in the round of 64, so this is still just a whole bunch of groups. But this group was completed by Drogo and Chem. Drogo has eliminated Chem from the tournament, so the loser of this series will have to play against Drogo with that tournament live on the line.
And that's actually amazing because Time did defeat Drogo in that first match, but also Stephano bounces out of this. He's not facing Cham, who is a Zerg that he beat, but you don't like your chances with Stephano against Zergs, even if you already beat them. So, interesting matchup, and it'll be a very tough group to see decided.
I've got another quick update for you out of Group D, where I think we had a rather surprising result early on with Silky defeating Hero Marine. Hero Marine, one of those guys that's truly in the running for a BlizzCon spot.
Yeah.
This is not a made-up story, guys. He's actually ranked 7, so he's kind of on the cutoff. He needs the points badly here, and good news for all the German fans out there, as Hero Marine did advance of that group after taking his revenge in the second series against Silky. But damn, what a good showing by Silky, taking out Hero Marine in an offline event. That's a really impressive score, if you ask me.
Not bad. Not bad. And of course, Ravi will be sad to hear that both the Americans in that group did lose, though, but not a bad showing.
That makes him sad. He's sad very often, Jeff.
Well, I'm not going to say no to that. Ling's circling around here, and the timing of this is a little bit peculiar. I like that Stephano's mixing this up. You'll notice that they avoid that Reaper, and they can flank around here. Ideally, they kill the SCV. Very rarely will they get the command center itself. But any kind of damage here is going to be nasty.
Yep, obviously Stephano's switching it up a little bit after all we said about how, in general, predictable and safe and careful he is in the beginning. It seems like on Dreamcatcher he wanted to switch things up, open up with these links. He's dancing back and forth. He's delaying this command center. So this is successful. Soon that Reaper is going to make his way back home, though. This is nice, but I really like the way that Time handled this. Time didn't lose a lot of SCVs, didn't take a silly fight. Well done by Time.
Yeah, so far he's lost nothing, and I actually don't like the dancing of the Lings for the most part. 0 losses on the side of our Terran player. It is only 6 Lings, but you do have to factor in that this is still not the most ideal opening for Stephano. We would have rather had Hatch first. We would have rather had those Lings be mostly drones, or at least be back here defending. But anyways, it's not like Stephano is like so far behind and we're going to start going, oh my gosh, he's super dead. But it was very well defended by Time.
And we know that Time likes to go pretty damn aggressive, right? Once he's got a medevac out or Hellions that can morph into Hellbats, whatever it is that Time decides to go for here, we know that he likes to go for more than just a little bit of map control. He's not the type of Terran that settles back for settles for a creep tomb or two. No, he wants drones. And that obviously makes this extra scary for Stephano because his economy is going to be a little weaker. He's going to have a few less units than he would normally have after that opening. So this is definitely time to be concerned if you're a Stephano fan, but let's see how he analyzes the next minute or two in this game.
Yeah, we can see it's going to be a Viking to push off some of that map vision here that Stephano doesn't have anyways. But it can, of course, go to the other side of the map and kill a few Overlords. And then behind that is going to be Hellions for now. And the number of Hellions has me thinking we should see an armory fairly soon so that they can be made into Hellbats, as it's 4 going on to 6 and presumably more after that. Actually, are those Cyclones?
Yeah. Yep. Wow.
Queued up
okay,
here.
that's
lot of queens coming up for Stephano, and Cyclones can chunk them down.
We talked about being a lazy scouter and all. Stephano, if he loses that one Overlord, if he doesn't get an Overlord into the main base, oh my goodness, Hellion Cyclone against pure Link Queen, that's not a fight that you want to take as a Zerg player.
Ooh.
Stephano really needs to scout this, Jeff. He needs to identify that this is not what he normally expects. Unless time just stops after the 2 Cyclones, but then I'm very confused about what we're actually watching here.
Yeah. You don't think of defensive Cyclones right now. He might just poke at it, and this might be that map control that we actually talked about time not really going for, you know what I mean? Where it like can battle the queens out on the field and keep that creep contained question mark ready.
It's just the 2 Cyclones, and now we've got Stim obviously on the way behind this. We've got a Liberator, but I'm a tiny bit confused. I think Stephano might be a little bit confused about spotting those Cyclones as well. He's like, whoa, because there are some weird Terran builds out there where they go for 2 factories very quickly and actually show up with an insane amount of Cyclones, Hellions, Hellbats, and +1 out of that armory.
Yeah.
But that's not the case here, Jeff. It's just this.
And he is hanging out here. The Liberator actually it does not want to be here right now. That's where all the queens are, and you brought him over. So Time is able to not lose it, but that Liberator should have represented some damage being done. So a little bit of a miscue to have Liberator go where the queens were antagonized to be.
Yep, now Stephano is so confident in this phase of the game that he fires up 9 drones. That's a little bit ambitious. He has to be very careful. He's going to engage his army of creep. Now the Hellions have been taking a little bit of a beating already. So the Hellions do get picked off, and Stephano just shuts this down. I'm very confused about those 2 Cyclones, Jeff. They don't make any
damage.
sense.
I mean, missed mining time, but that's actually a dead Liberator as it dies. And the force out in the map dies as well, so creep control is gone. Hurting the economy is gone. And Stephano, like you talked about at the very beginning, did all of this off the backs of Lings and Queens, so his investment wasn't even that high.
I'm confused and a little bit lost about what I've just witnessed here, but we'll see where Time takes it. Time is obviously not down and out. Dreamcatcher is still an awesome map for some of those weird Terran pushes where you can put tanks on the other side of those ledges and you can really make it awkward for Lings and Banelings to get the connections that they're looking for, as our observer is showing us as well. So there is still plenty of potential for the Chinese Terran, but I don't like how this last minute and a half went for him.
Well, I would even be the sterner voice of caution where you're like, there's plenty of potential. I'm like, yes, there is, but you are going up against the final boss as far as I'm concerned. It's a Zerg that feels confident about droning up to about 80. Creep spread is running rampant. And Stephano is like a kid in a playground right now. He can do whatever he wants. This map now, as you said, is still pretty okay for Terran. There's good siege points on those 3rd and 4th bases. But you got to have an army to do it.
Absolutely, but yeah, on other maps I'd be more worried. On this map, I've seen so many miraculous Terran fights here.
Yeah,
even
really
from the best Zergs, where every now and then they feel like they can take a fight, or they can desync their tanks a little bit. Oh, Banelings getting close to these Marines. But Time is on top of his control there. Yeah, I would refuse to count Time out, but he definitely needs to start getting some really good trades here.
Now some Lings gonna try and find a individual tank actually as they do find it. Jump on top of it. Even just the straggling Lings are not much of a force. Time on the flip side is picking off a queen or none. Excuse me.
Well, I thought he was gonna get it as well, Jeff. So
trying to hurt her a little bit. The Ling damage is huge.
Yep, this is a nice counterattack, but maybe the Marines can achieve something. No, the Marines cannot achieve much. They're gonna go for the main base. There is a Spore Crawler there, so he's gonna be very, very careful. Wow, these Lings are doing a tremendous amount of damage at this point.
He's in the natural.
Time needs to do so much damage here, Jeff.
I don't see it happening. The Lings flood in. They're gonna push this force back. 19, 20 SCVs dying behind this. It looks like he has plugged it up for now. The 3rd is in disarray. And Time is not finding that damage. That's the 4th base. You go ahead. Oh, no, excuse me. This is the 4th base.
4th, but there is a 5th as well on the gold, which Time is completely unaware of. Maybe he feels like it could potentially be that, geez, 2 more SUVs are going to get picked off here as well. And during all of this, I think Time has been so distracted. He's obviously broke. He doesn't start the upgrades. And if there's one thing that allows Terran to win miraculous fights, it's to at least be even in upgrades, but preferably be up in upgrades.
Preferably is correct. And the light at the end of the tunnel, depending on who you're talking about, is starting to get a little bit more bright. It's like Time, just walk towards it. It'll all be over soon, my friend. As those upgrades do get queued up, but as Roddy pointed out, 2-2's about to finish for our Zerg players. So that's going to be like a solid minute and a half or so of a 2 upgrade advantage for Stephano.
That's insane.
And when you're already behind and now you have to be like, well, I can't get much done, presumably, in that time as well, it's going to get even harder.
And he's still, can we just confirm that Time has never seen the gold? Like, I'm pretty damn sure that he has not seen the gold base. Nope.
Confirm it.
Yeah, he's not even been close to it, so to speak. So another run by, and the depot is lowered, and these links do have that upgrade advantage. Armor is already done, +2 melee is almost done as well. So these Marines, they don't stand a fighting chance.
And he pulls the SDVs just to be like, here's what you came for, just take them. As they die at the third, they're dying at the natural. Now Marines are coming out, and they are going to stop this counterattack, but it
Time needs to win the game here. He pretty much needs to win the game with this attack. And he's going to get the fourth base, which normally is awesome. But there is still that gold base on the right top side of the map. There's just no Sim City at all, man. It's just, it's wide open.
Stephano's setting up for a pincher attack of sorts. And he can buy that time, because as Roddy pointed out, that base normally really critical, but he just re-drones over to the gold, says that's fine. I probably should have had 5 bases at that moment anyways, so I'll go back down to 4 versus your 2.
A massive drop in the main base. Stephano doesn't have much in position, but he has an insane amount of banelings.
Oh my god, don't do it. Don't do it. Here come the banelings. They're going to be on creep for a lot as the tank's just now. CG is trying to load up and get out of there. And he is going to get most of the force out of there, and it's a good thing too, because they would have been obliterated. The third base once again disrupted. Lings can't, I mean, that's a wall in.
That's an ugly wall as well. People comment about my walls all the time.
Well, they'll be talking about some others as well,
that's not the prettiest wall I've ever seen either, guys.
Oh, jeez.
And it is no more a wall, and that means more Lings, still with an upgrade advantage, guys. Can't emphasize that enough. That is such a big deal.
Gets a spawning pool.
Yeah, that's
already another one being made, by the way.
Yeah, Stephano saw that one coming.
Before it died.
Look at these Lings, Jeff. How many SPs have gone down in this game? I say
170.
52. 64. Should have gone for 64.
Anyways, time is bouncing around between this, and again, as Roddy said earlier, normally this would be a fantastic move, but when you're this far behind and you're not really achieving much, anything that's lost is huge.
Can Stephano actually build anything? Is the spawning pool his only production facility?
Yeah. He doesn't even build spires until he gets a hive.
He can't spend his money, Jeff. He's got over 3k minerals.
Yeah.
Hey, is Stephano actually... Imagine if Time finds the spawning pool now. Oh my... Where is that pool? Can we take a look where that pool is? Nah, he's not going to get that.
He's not going to find much, Roddy. He's down about 30 supply, and as you pointed out, there's actually a bank for Stephano. He's really got to throw down an Ultra's Cavern or double spire or something, because he literally cannot spend that money until he does. And it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to go Roaches or Hydras right now.
I mean, a couple of these Banes were absolutely finished off, so Time is not going to get everything here. 20 Banes at once were morphing for Stephano. And Time actually, I think he had a tiny opportunity there. Imagine if he finds that pool before it's done. And Stephano just rolls over with 4,500 minerals in the bank. But
it's a little bit silly for Stephano to be in this position. Like, literally just build something else here, my friend. Do the double spire or something.
But now he was able to spend all his money. He fired up 60 Lings. He's got plenty of banelings, and Time has just been taking way too many economic losses in the game to be able to trade like this. The splits are good and all, but the numbers are in favor of the Frenchman, who will advance to the round of 32, Jeff, after winning his group in the round of 64.
Beats Jam, beats Time here. He goes down 0-1 at the beginning of this, but rallies it back off strong defense and huge map control. You love seeing the rock star of StarCraft 2 advance like that. It's been a long time coming. He's always made it about this far in these WCS stops before he gets put in a group of 3 or 4 Zergs and it's lights out. But not right now for Stephano. He will go to sleep tonight dreaming of bigger and better things, Roddy.
If you just think about the winning WCS, or at least winning this round of 64 here, what that means for Stephano is that he most likely cannot get in the same group as Cero, I would say, even though Cero did win challenges, so I guess he can get one top-seeded player. But it's very nice for Stephano, because now he's supposed to get 2 guys that are runners-up in the round of 64. So he goes into the round of 32, not just, okay, that's awesome, but he potentially gets a better group as well than he normally gets as being the runner-up in this round of 64.
Well, good performance, and that means that Time will take on Petit Drogo to decide who advances outside of this group as well. But before we ever get to see that, we're going to go to my favorite interview in all of esports, Stephano and Smix on the stage.
Thank you very much, In Control. Congratulations, Stephano. WCS Valencia, you were out. Group Stage 1 wasn't such a good time for you, but this event, you're moving on to Group Stage 3. You made it to the round of 32. Things are looking good.
Yeah, they are. And finally, I'm getting a decent draft, and finally, I can show that, I can play other matchups than ZvZ. I got so bored of ZvZ and almost into depression, but right now I feel alive again.
I know you were definitely happy about facing a Terran for this match. So let's talk about this series. First map, it did look like Time won pretty convincingly, but thankfully maps 2 and 3, you were able to pull it back, and a really good series from you after that. So talk about the series overall.
I just needed a bit of time to adapt to playing Terran. I'm not used to it anymore, sadly. So I do have the skills, but I still had I needed a bit of a warm-up. And there was a lot of mistakes game 1, which I tried not to make again. And I was really happy to see him playing Bio, because I think I have the best way to play against Bio with just pure Link Bane, good crit spread, counter-attacks, which I didn't do in the second game, but third game I was like, yeah. I showed a very passive playstyle. Let's surprise him and keep attacking so he doesn't expect it, and it worked quite well.
Well, after you're showing your ZVT, I know you've been very vocal about your love, hate for ZvZ, but I heard rumors that you've been working on your ZvZ a lot and that it's improved quite a bit. Is that true?
It is true, it is true. And I have to thank Lambo and Elaser. They've been keeping up with my sulking and my no, ZvZ shit, no, I can't, I don't want to. And finally, they forced me to practice it. I'm not saying I'm perfect or good, but I'm higher than 50% now, which wasn't the case before.
So now that you've improved your ZvZ, which you've always said that was your Achilles heel, now that you've sort of fixed that or improved it at least, how far do you think you can go here?
It depends on the bracket I can get. If I pass the group stage 3, or the draft I will get for group stage 3 first of all. But if I can get 1 Zerg and 2 other races, I'd be happy. The magic will happen.
Well, congratulations again, Ilya. It's always a pleasure and a great time speaking with you. Nathanias, let's head back to you.
I agree. Always a pleasure spending time with Stephano on the stage there as he's able to clear this one out. Sloppy start, but as he said, just need a little bit of time to warm up, guys, and then he took it back.
Yeah, he came out swinging. The first game, of course, was a very wild build out of Time, caught him off guard a little bit, but he stabilized that defense there, and that final game was just, oh man. I mean, Time made a go of it, right? From a pretty damn bad position, but the opening pressure, Stephano's blocking the Liberators, blocking the Hellbats at every turn, so cool to see the Frenchman back in form, playing the matchup which he enjoys playing.
And I know you were talking about this before the series got started, Pig, but those Ling run-bys, especially in that last game, and even in the previous games, Stephano was just relentless with them, and that was what was really, I feel like, killing off all those 19 or so SCVs. I mean, that kind of does start to seal the deal in that situation, so.
Yeah, I mean, when you constantly have to deal with those Ling run-bys, very resource and time consuming to deal with. But anything that stood out for you from our Terran player, Pig?
I think he looked really good.
Someone we don't get to see a lot of.
Yeah, I like the build choice in game 1 where Time did pick up the win. The the kind of weird Hellbat timing where you've got like a couple of other units in there supporting it. Then I also like the choice not to overcommit with it. Yeah. He saw there's like a ton of queens, and instead he kind of zoned around, he created threat, and that opened up the chance for the Liberator to come in and do the big killer damage. And he tried that again on Parasite with lots of Liberators kind of coming in, creating a lot of problems for Stephano. Putting the pressure on, but Stephano was able to kind of just handle everything while backstabbing with Zerglings. So it was a good game from Time. I definitely feel a bit more confidence for him. And I believe he's going to have to play against Drogo to see who gets the second spot in that group. So that's going to be pretty cool.
Good TVP action. You gentlemen been following some games during this series?
We were. Unfortunately, all those games have finished up. There's actually only one series left over in Group Stage 2, which is Time versus Drogo. But we were both watching some of our own games. We kind of found some highlight moments for us to kind of show, so we can show off, I guess, my game first.
Yeah,
all right. Yeah. Let's take a look at what you've got.
So this is actually from game 3 of Jon Snow versus Crow. Now I want to know, the Crow was over here. He burrowed some Banelings, and he was in a really tough spot. He'd done a lot of damage to Jon Snow, but Jon Snow, just throughout this series, just always seemed very ready for Crow. And you can see actually over here, Crow even sets up with all of these Banelings and Lings trying to go for this big 360 surround, because this is the big all-in. Crow has a bunch of Mutas, and he has Lings and Banelings. But you want to know, these two Lurkers, just watch, as you end up seeing these Lurkers literally just obliterate the Zerglings and the Banelings. This is what I think really made it hard, because I think with those Banelings connecting on the Hydras here, these Mutas, they are actually in high enough numbers that maybe he starts to pull through there, but just a little bit too much. And we end up seeing Jon Snow actually advance out first in his group from that.
Nice.
It was pretty cool to see Crow there. He really took the fight to Jon Snow. He was actually really in the driver's seat in some positions. But at the same time, I was watching the rematch of our first game for today, Harston versus Snoot. And it ended up, going very close. I just updated the scoreboard as we go. So this is the final game. It's game 3. It's the first time we've seen Fracture today. Very exciting. And it's the story of a probe who wanted to see the whole world. He wanted to come in. He said, that's a hatchery. Yep, I'm just scouting. The Overlord says, I'm going to keep an eye on you. And Harston, channeling his inner Haas, said, let's put 3 pylons on top of your ramp. So he actually came in here with this really brutal cannon rush. And Snoot didn't even try to fight it. He realized he wasn't going to be able to break out. So this game got very, very unfortunate and messy for Snoot very, very fast. He didn't really have an answer. You can see Harston built up this double gateway here. And Snoot actually tried to respond with some macro, or proxy hatches, I should call them, but they just kept getting denied by cannons, probes. They weren't able to get up. Harston dealt with that, and at the same time, he was able to get up a lot of stalkers. Not so good with my fast forward hotkeys. Let's just click the button. Let's just click the button.
All right,
there.
Harston wins.
Harston wins. I'm very good at observing.
It was a great slice of cheddar.
I'm pretty good at observing on this laptop. My bad. But yeah, basically, it was a really sad story there for Snoot because it's just once those pylons were up, he didn't have a drone build. He couldn't block it. And going out like that, it was basically just stalkers poking in and out of his main base, sniping down the Ravagers one at a time. The shield batteries were hailing, and this is something Snoot had trouble against, his teammate U-Thermal at Home Story Cup. So it's a very sad way for Snoot to go out of the tournament, but he is eliminated after that.
And not just the tournament, right? Snoot has been talking a lot, and of course now he does say a lot of the stuff oftentimes on Twitter and everything, but he said that this is possibly going to be his last tournament if he doesn't qualify for BlizzCon.
We do hear that.
We do hear that.
Probably more than we should from some of these players. We're going to take a look at the groups, though, and catch y'all up to speed on how things have been shaking up. As you guys were just talking about, Harston did barely squeeze out in second place there. We've got Raynor in first. Everyone was very excited to see him come play here in Group A. Let's just get right on to Group B. I'm looking for surprises. Tell me when you guys see a crazy upset here. Jon Snow first place. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, I was actually also really impressed. I know Pig was mentioning him. Crow really showing up. Even though he didn't quite make it out and he did get eliminated by both Jon Snow and I believe Zanster, he had a really, really good performance. He got to that winner's match and I think impressed a lot of people.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at Group C, how this one finished up. Nurchio and Showtime making their way out versus Noise and Go-Go Joey. Can't say anything super surprising there. Let's take a look at Group D, as we had Mana and Hero Marine get out over the American Terran and Zerg.
Yeah.
I mean, a special note, of course, was that Silky did take down Hero Marine in their first series, did go into the winner's match, but it was the rematch there where Hero Marine managed to close it out. So unfortunate for Silky, but another good performance.
Raze, the American Protoss player, taking a series off of Clem there. Pretty sick.
Yeah, Raze is, he's kind of been on that up and up in terms of he was a Terran player, he swapped over to Protoss, and of course that has that kind of learning period. But this year has kind of gradually gone over and he's getting better and better. So maybe not necessarily a player to look out for in 2018, but in 2019, keep an eye out.
He's whippling himself into shape.
That's why they call him Jay the Whip Whipple.
That's true.
Let's just keep moving forward. Shadowdown and Semper over Riser and Dis. I mean, those are the two NA Protoss players.
They're both very good, actually. It's surprising because Disc has been kind of at that very close to the pro tier for a while, but Riser has been on the rise this year. Oh gosh, I just can't stop. Sorry. So Riser's gotten way better. So for him to actually place in front of Disc is huge, right, Ravi?
Yeah, Disc is, I would say, one of like the low-key, super good Protoss players in North America that just does really well in practice, but not in actual events.
I was gonna say, I'm like, he's one of the guys that takes my ladder points all the time. Yeah. And I'm like, sometimes that's a good thing because it also can show I'm not exactly at the top end.
He'll take your ladder points on the ladder, and then he'll be in a tournament, and then he'll make you look bad because he beats everyone on the ladder, but then loses in tournaments.
Yeah, interesting to see. Good performance there out of Riser. Moving forward, we have, of course, this group, which is about to be settled as time did fall to Stephano in that winner's match, which means Drogo is going to be facing off against him in the final match of the day. That is actually going to be our next series. And looking at Group H, Namshar and Denver, TLO and Cuddlebear knocked out.
Denver's been on the rise. I mean, Ravi, you've been talking about him a lot here, so no surprises, I guess, for you.
Yeah, Denver has just been doing really, really well the last 2 months. And Namshar, the other player that I think has been doing really, really well in the last couple of months. I was actually really excited to see TLO playing so well in Group Stage 1, was able to knock out Seoul, but it looks like he had a little bit of trouble in this next group stage. Still awesome to see the Doctor kind of showing up a little bit, but Namshar and Denver really on fire lately.
Stefan the Wunsch not able to hold up against the man named after a city from another country. As that just about does it here. We have one more match we're going to bring you from Group Stage 3 since we've got that one already ready to go. It is going to be a Terran versus Protoss. It's going to be Time versus Petit Drogo. We'll be right back. This is the StarCraft World Championship Series.